welcome to episode 62. You like how I clocked it there of the It's Just a Hill Cycling Podcast? Yep, it is episode 62 of the podcast, and I am at NBX with bike mechanic Ben Stone. Hi, Ben. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hello, John. Hello, people of the internet.
I feel like it's been a long time coming to get you on here, reluctantly or not, but thanks for doing it.
Oh, yeah. I've never been asked before, so this is the first time I was formally asked.
And I think I am excited to dive into a bunch of different things with you, and maybe not just this podcast, but other podcasts in the future. But first,
that's what you think.
Yes, exactly. We got to make sure this goes smoothly until the second one happens. But before we dive into technical stuff, bike mechanic stuff, I love to paint a picture of your sort of background with bikes. Do you remember when you first learned how to ride a bike? Do you remember how old you were? I was a late bloomer myself.
I was not, but I do remember it didn't go well. Yep. I was released by my father at a high rate of speed directly into a mailbox.
Oh, nice. I remember going over like a rock wall, but you were a young boy at the time?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I feel like I was 2, but I think I was probably 6 or 7.
And then after you learned how to ride a bike, were you riding it around the neighborhood? Or did you ride a lot as a kid, or was it kind of just just another activity?
Up until about 11, I didn't do much riding just because we lived on like a really busy road, and then like the road up above us was like a gigantic hill, so I had just like no interest in it. But we moved into like a really quiet neighborhood after that, and then I started riding everything: go-karts, dirt bikes.
Oh. Okay.
4-wheelers, BMX bikes, mountain bikes, everything kind of materialized from there.
Oh, interesting. And when did that, like, were you competitive in any of those other, like, non-motorized, any of these motorized 2-wheel, 4-wheel, any of that sort of stuff?
I am not competitive at all with anything.
Yep.
Really.
But you
across the board.
And so you were never racing any of these dirt bikes, these motorbikes?
No, never racing.
Yeah.
We always raced each other. It was like, we had a track around the house.
Yeah.
We started with go-karts as kids because they were a little safer. So we thought. Yeah. And we progressed into 4-wheelers and dirt bikes. And then really, as most of you realize that ride dirt bikes, it gets tough to find places like to safely ride that you're not getting like hassled all the time about. So we actually transitioned into kind of bikes and mountain bikes because of that. It was just easier to do, or parents didn't have to deal with
quieter.
Yeah. Yep. Especially where we live. Like, I'm from Eastern Connecticut, so it was like there's like next to no places to ride a 4-wheeler or a dirt bike without being at a racetrack. So it was tough to justify as a kid.
Sure. But what about, have you ever ridden bikes competitively?
Yeah, I did. On and off cross country racing when I was younger.
Yeah.
I liked, as I still do, I like training for racing more than actually racing.
Same.
Like, by the time it comes to race day, like, I'm so filled with anxiety about how I'm going to perform that I just lose interest in it.
Yeah, you've built up to it for 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is. Yeah.
And I just don't have that, like, that drive to beat other people at stuff. Like, I just don't care about it. Like, I like competing with my friends on a friendly basis, but when it gets too serious, I'll just go ride by myself. Right. Always been like that with kind of everything, but I still take stuff seriously. But I don't utilize the skills that I develop, I guess.
Yeah, no. Well, to me, and when you talk about like getting the anxiety of race day, right? Like, that's when it becomes like too much.
Yeah, I just
get in my head.
I just never fit in that crew, Like, I'd always just see like men's racing is competitive, obviously, and there's a lot of testosterone around. I just don't know if I have any. So it's like you always see people getting frustrated with how they performed, or they crashed and they're screaming at somebody because they're crashed. I'm just like, I just hate being here.
Yeah, right. Because you could build up to something for months at a time, and then all of a sudden one mechanical, one crash, and it throws it all out the window.
It was always so weird when I was a kid. Like, I had good fitness and I had a really good start, so I could get out in front. Yeah. And then like people wouldn't let you by.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dude, just move over. Like, if you're on my wheel after I get by, I'll just let you by. Like, we can, like, the strongest man can win, But it never was like that. It was just always ended up crashing somebody out because you wanted to get by him. It was just stupid. But people love racing, I don't have a problem with that. I just, liked training with semi-serious cyclists more than I liked actually competing.
Right. What about now? I know that you love to fish. And you could probably maybe even talk longer about fishing than you could bikes. I don't know. Is fishing competitive?
Certain aspects of it are, I guess. It's kind of just like cycling, as you can do whatever you want.
Right. You can do your own thing.
Yeah, I do not fish competitively. I usually fish by myself in the dark, which is like the least competitive way you could do it.
3 a.m. or something.
Yeah. Yep. Like I'm a nighttime striper fisherman, usually in a kayak now because I'm too old to get into the surf. But I used a wetsuit when I was younger. And I got into surf fishing kind of when I started working in Rhode Island, just because it was a convenient thing I could do in the morning. But grew up largemouth bass fishing with my two uncles one was very serious at it, and the other one was serious about teaching us how to do it, myself and my cousin. So it was something we did since we were young kids, So it's just always been your fallback hobby, Like you can kind of kick it to the curb when life gets too busy, but it's nice to come back to. Cycling's been love-hate with me for the last 10 years with work and stress. It's not if I'm not doing it at a high level, I don't really enjoy doing it. So I'm not like one of those guys that can just go out and have a fun
leisurely
cruise around, you know what I mean? And
right.
if I'm not in shape, I don't want to do it. So
because you're looking at numbers and you're feeling
it's always been metric related for me. So it's it's one thing the internet is kind of bad at, is it's constantly reminding you of what you previously did.
Yes, right.
So it's it's tougher. So fishing's kind of my relaxing hobby, I guess.
Yeah.
And then cycling is the one I like to do when I have time to do it. But if I don't have time to focus on it, I don't enjoy doing it. So
now there's the Shimano connection between bikes and fishing. But that isn't why you got into fishing or why you got into bikes. It just sort of
it actually has almost no relationship with it. But I do service fishing rails as well. I do build my own rods.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then I write articles on a fishing forum actually for teardowns. So similar to bike stuff, is pretty complicated to work on, really small parts. And then marketing gets involved, just confuses the consumer base. So there's a few reviewer, technician people that kind of tear stuff down like me, take detailed photos of it so you can kind of see through all the marketing crap.
Like how things actually work.
Yeah. And if the benefits that they're talking about are actually justifiable. So very similar to cycling, the fishing industry is saturated with good technology.
Yeah.
To the point now where it's hard to make a justifiable improvement.
Yep.
And the product is so expensive, just like cycling, that without marketing, there's not a lot of people that would be interested in buying new stuff. Right. But a lot of that stuff is not transparent,
Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of these companies have just like bloated so much that like marketing is
correct.
All of it.
Yeah. And just like kind of the high end road cycling side and mountain biking side. The fishing side has refined itself to death. So and the Japanese are largely responsible for that. So Shimano and Daiwa is their main competitor, but they are perfectionists to the core, which I've always appreciated about their bike parts as well as their fishing equipment. Is they are relentless in improving stuff.
So have you always been mechanically sound? Have you always been the type of person to want to take things apart, understand them, put them back together?
Yeah, I don't know how it started, but my grandfather on my dad's side is he was a car mechanic. Yeah. Back when you had to be a mechanic to work on cars. Right. It was all dirty, nasty work.
No computers.
Broken stuff. No computers. So it was. I knew I would have got along with him. He was really old when I was younger, but he was incredibly mechanical. Great welder. Great fabricator. Built all his own stuff. Built his own generators for his house and stuff like that. Cool. So I think I inherited a lot of it from him. And then my uncles on my mother's side were also really kind of hands-on guys. So you kind of picked up a lot of stuff when you were younger and what you were kind of expected to do and maintain your equipment at your house and do the man jobs around the house. So do that with my father and my uncles, and just kind of attached itself to the sports that I did because it was tough to maintain the stuff when I was young, there was only a couple bike shops around. Most of them weren't working on stuff that I was riding, so kind of got left to your own devices.
It made
to fix
sense
stuff.
For you to learn how to do it.
You got an annoying look every time you went into a bike shop with like something you bought online because they couldn't sell you something that you wanted effectively, and then you brought it there to get it fixed. So you ended up kind of figuring out your own stuff. That's actually kind of how I got started, and in mechanic stuff was my dad was like so frustrated going to all these bike shops. So
Sure.
where I lived in Connecticut in Plainfield, there was a really good shop in Putnam that dealt with mountain bike stuff that I ended up working at later.
Yeah.
There was a more cross-country and road shop in Danielson, very close to where I lived, but always busy with a huge backlog.
Yeah.
They could help me out with some stuff, and then there was another shop in Mystic, same shop that's down there now, just in a different location, and they were the same thing, really busy, but they could work on some nicer stuff. So I'd kind of bounce back and forth between the three of them to get stuff worked on, but my dad just got frustrated with it, and he, which we can talk about if we have time, but he found someone that could kind of take me on almost as an apprentice, and just let me stumble my way through a bunch of projects, and pick up what I could.
That was at a bike shop?
Kind of. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So there was an old man in Plainfield, Connecticut called Ed Lambert.
Okay.
All right. Yep. He was a retired Navy guy, loved bikes his whole life, spent some time overseas, and then started to actually like import parts in his kind of, once he retired from the Navy, import bike parts and start building stuff. Like he really loved like old school BMX product.
Oh, okay.
So he was a master wheel builder, hated mountain bikes with a passion, hated anything with new technology. So he was like your typical old school bike shop guy. Yeah. But he actually ran a neighborhood bike shop that was mostly free, like a community bike shop, out of his garden shed.
Oh, okay. And just like in his backyard.
Yeah, garden shed's about the size of this room, maybe. Yeah. There wasn't a foot to stand inside that thing.
Sure.
It was packed. Like you had to step over boxes to get in there. Yeah. And then every Saturday and Sunday, he would like drag everything out of there. Kids and parents would start showing up throughout the day, and you could buy a part from him, and then he would show you how to install it, or you could pay for him to install it, and you'd pick it up in a week or something like that. But my dad somehow found this guy and pretty much ditched me on him for a couple of years. Yeah. But there was kind of three industry guys, including myself, that kind of came out of that shed.
Oh, cool.
Gary Nichols, who owns a chain of bike shops in Connecticut called Pedal Power. Yep. He was like the first generation to come out of Ed's shop. Yeah. And then Chuck Goldie, who is currently our Kink BMX rep, but had his own BMX shop for a long time named Daily Grind. Yeah. He came out of there. He was like the generation before me. Okay. And then me, and then Ed passed.
Oh, yeah. And so that was just like word of mouth type of, like, he was direct calling out, like, to get parts, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So back then it's still around, actually. It's still a big distributor, but JBI importers, that's like kind of how they brought crappy Chinese domestic products to the U.S. first, Yeah. And he loved all that stuff because it was like a budget bike shop. It was community based. So like the cheapest he could get stuff to get kids on safe equipment riding was always the best. And he liked to build bikes from scratch, so he'd get frame sets and build the wheels for them. And I learned how to build wheels, I think, there when I was probably 10 or 11, So you learn pretty quick, and then he sold a ton of stuff. Like he'd make like $5 on a set of wheels, by the time it was built up, but he sold a ton of stuff because of that. So, but it taught me a lot of mechanical skills because he didn't believe in fancy tools. Yeah. Everything was really basic. Yeah. You didn't have the right tool to work on stuff a lot of times, so you had to kind of be...
make it work.
Yeah. 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 It was crude, we'll put it that way.
Okay.
And then like I started getting into mountain bike riding and buying high-end mountain bikes that I couldn't get serviced anywhere effectively without a huge time associated to it, the turnaround time. So I started working on my own stuff there, and I'd have to bring my own tools there and stuff, and you just see him in the background with his hands on his hips. I hate this thing. It's so stupid. Just ride a BMX bike, But he kind of just let me do my own thing there, so I did that for a long time. Yeah. And I actually think I got my first job in the bike industry because I annoyed the guys so much that they just gave me a job to kind of neutralize me. Yeah. Yeah, I was there all the time. So but I was pretty good mechanically, so I would just buy parts either online or I kind of gravitated to one shop in Putnam, Connecticut. Back then it was called Silver Bike Company. Okay. And they had a couple hardcore downhill guys there. Yeah. And then the owner of the store had both of his sons working there, which I got pretty friendly with after, spending a couple of years annoying the crap out of them. So yeah, they had a BMX shop at a track in Chepachet, I think it was, in Rhode Island. So they said pretty much, you can work at the track, work at the BMX shop, like
how old
practice
were you
and race.
at this point? Like 14?
I wasn't paying taxes, so I got to be careful with this question.
Sure.
Yeah, I was 14 or 15, I think. This was like, so I might have been a little younger than that.
If the tax man is watching this podcast,
it's been more than 5 years, so I'm okay. It's more than 5 years, I think, so I'm safe. So yeah, I was probably 14 when I was working at the racetrack, and it's just basic stuff. Change chain rings out, change the tires, change tubes, change freewheels, cassette cogs, build wheels in the off time, take care of the shop at the track. So it was really basic stuff. And then after I became of age, I started just working at the normal shop, I had no interest in selling stuff. So I was stuck in the service department working on the mountain bike stuff and the road stuff, and then general maintenance, trying to pick up what I could from that, because I didn't really have any experience in road bikes at the time.
Sure.
This was in like '02, I think I started there.
Okay.
So it was a long time ago. And I'd worked the whole summer.
Yeah.
And then when I went to high school, I went to a tech high school in Connecticut for automotive, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then I graduated at tech college. That was my original trajectory, was to go into that.
Yes, we both went to New England Tech.
Yes.
Proud alumni of New England Tech.
Yeah. Light $40,000 on fire.
Yeah.
So that was my trajectory. So while I was working at the bike shop, I was going to school to either at high school for automotive or driving all the way to Warwick every day and going back.
Do you feel like those skills, those automotive skills, like translate enough to bike mechanic type of stuff? Similar mindset, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. Like, our stuff's a lot simpler. The thing I appreciated most about bikes was there's like a connection you have if you're a good mechanic with your customer base. Yeah. So, and something I always enjoyed is there's not a lot of mechanics that can ride with elite cyclists, but I always pushed myself as much as I could or had the time to do that. So I picked up as much as I could from those cyclists, kind of assess their needs. Yeah. And then that's what I always liked about my job, was like, even if it's a basic cyclist and they just want their bike to work for a season without any maintenance, like what do they expect from their bike shop? And then an elite cyclist obviously has different needs. Sure. Competition-based stuff is highly critical. So learning how to adapt their bikes for their kind of race schedule, make sure they're comfortable with it, so they don't have to think about it, because most of them are mental head cases. Yeah. So they get enough stuff to worry about. They don't need to worry about their bike. Right. So that kind of stuff. And then mountain bikes are like their own thing. So like learning how to be a mountain bike mechanic for at least my tenure from '02 to now, it progresses a lot every year. Technology's just recently kind of stabilized, but it's been in a constant state of flux. So you pretty much learn stuff, instantly forget it, move on to the next product line, where the competitive road stuff has been more stable up until about 2 or 3 years ago. It started to change. Yeah. But I was ready for it a long time ago, because pretty much all they did was they turned into mountain bikes. Sure. They took all the technology we had on mountain bikes 10 years ago and started using it. So your typical road mechanics and your road riders were really uncomfortable with the new technology. But it's easy to stabilize that if you have a lot of experience at the bike shop. So, like, I don't ever worry about disc brakes or bleeding disc brakes or taking care of all that stuff, or press fit bearings or any of that crap, because we've been dealing with linkages and crappy disc brakes for 20 years on mountain bikes. Yeah. So we can kind of put their mind at ease. But I think really the only thing that translates is just the mechanical sense. Auto mechanics have a much tougher job. They are mainly working on cars that people don't care about. Right. And also that they don't want to pay to fix. They just want it to get going and be safe. They don't care how you do it. They just don't want to spend a lot of money on it. Right. So I always got into this uncomfortable scenario. I worked at a couple garages when I was younger, where you should go forward with other things, but they're telling you not to. Sure. I hate that. Right. But you're saying, hey, replace a filter, replace a belt. And they're like, no, I just need to get to work. Yeah. I just need the car to start. So, and I understand why people are doing it. Everyone's got a budget, but I'm OCD. Yeah. It just was like terrible for me. You know what I mean? And then you're thinking about someone with their family in this car. And
Right.
you're just like, you don't want to fix this? And like, I don't have the money to. And you're like, ugh.
Right.
So I wouldn't have been a good car mechanic because I would have just been doing a bunch of shit for free on like my days off.
Right.
Because I felt bad
Because it felt like it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. So most cyclists are fine with you, especially the stuff that I work on, the higher end stuff. They're just like, just do whatever you think needs to be done. I trust you.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to hear.
Right.
So that's what I always liked about, being a mechanic in a bike shop versus a car mechanic, So you don't get into that situation very often with cars unless you're working on race cars.
Right. Or something that's high end and right.
I never really raced cars at all. So it's kind of like I never even thought about it. And it's like, it's one of those things I think that if you're going to be a good race car mechanic or a good car mechanic, work on that kind of stuff, you have to have a background in it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's a job. It's not a passion. And I don't think you could hack it in that world, It's the same thing with ours. This isn't like a really profitable industry. It's a tough industry.
Sure, yeah.
So if you're going to be in it and you're going to be a professional in it, then you're going to pay your dues. You know what I mean? Right. So, and it's a long time. Like I've been in over 20 years now, and it's like there's still a lot left to learn.
Yeah.
I do have to sell stuff now though, which is a downside.
It's just that's just not your favorite part of the job.
Yeah, I don't mind selling high-end product because most of the time the questions come back to the mechanics anyway. So it's and then I dabbled in a lot of fitting stuff over the last 10 years as well. So I'm a certified fitter as well. I don't practice, but it's nice to talk to people about their needs on and off the bike and what they're expecting out of their bike. And it gets complicated really quick. It's not like these decisions are tough because of the price of the bike and the technology that's in the bike. So it's nice to talk to one person that could answer all your questions. At least that's my opinion. So I always put myself in that scenario where if I myself walked into a bike shop, who would I want to talk to? I'm going to be that person.
Right.
So
the person that can help inform you, hey, you're going to fit well on this bike. It's going to meet your needs for the type of riding that you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're going to drop $9 or $10 or $11, $12, $13,000 on a bike.
Right.
If I was walking into a bike shop and spending that kind of money, if there was anything sketchy about the sale, somebody didn't know something, I'm going to instantly get uncomfortable.
Sure.
And then as far as the maintenance of that same bike goes, like if you're not going to do it yourself, then you got to be comfortable with the shop that's standing behind the product.
Absolutely.
And that means the guys behind the bench that you don't always see.
Right.
So I always just wanted to be that person. So if there was, I don't need to be a bookkeeper, I don't need to be an accountant, but I want to be able to answer any question that comes into the bike shop on anything.
Yeah.
So I've always tried to be that person.
I mean, I've firsthand experienced that. I mean, that's part of the reasons why I like to come to NBX. It's like the amount of information that I would ask one question.
Yeah.
And I would get the answer to that question. But then it was like, well, if you go this road, you might be looking at this or looking at that. And
exactly.
I mean, and I, not to just really gas you up here, but you do have quite the reputation as a mechanic in the state. I know nothing about mountain bikes and suspensions, but people tell me that you know so much about like all these different types of suspensions. And I know that that's a very intricate thing, right?
Yep. It's the same as most kind of complex circuits, I guess, in bikes, but and the other thing I want to talk about is like, as far as mechanics goes, there's a lot of great mechanics in the state. There's a lot of great ones in Southern Mass and Rhode Island too. It's just, it's not that I'm special. It's that our industry is bad at maintaining staff. Okay?
Sure. Yeah.
So bike shops struggle with making enough margin to sustain talented people.
Right.
So the reason why there isn't a senior mechanic at every bike shop in the state is not because they don't exist. It's because they're pushed out of the industry because of
financial reasons or something.
What I mean?
Yeah, right.
So I've been lucky enough to work at some good shops, kind of learned what I could and moved into areas that can sustain the pay that I want to make, and can survive with. But that isn't the case for everyone. So it's, if you have a local shop that has a talented kid, spend money at the shop if you want to maintain that staff member. You know what I mean? So that's something that's been slipping the last couple of years is online sales. Everybody wants something different. Everybody wants something cheap. Bike shops are fairly stubborn with what they're willing to stock and spend money on. But there's some ways you can support the local businesses and also the staff. You know, so if you have people that you like at specific locations, support the business as much as you can.
Right.
Otherwise, they're going to leave.
And that doesn't necessarily mean going and having them like fix every flat tire that you have.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Go buy the tires at the shop. Go buy the bar tape at the shop.
Exactly. Right? Anything helps. And obviously, the brands that you decide to back have a huge
because of different margins at the shop, or
well, no, just mainly like there's a lot of consumer direct brands that people are buying product from right now that are not associated with any retail markets. They're trying to put out the middleman. That's their marketing campaign. But
yes.
You can talk to most of the avid cyclists that are riding bikes from those brands. When they have issues with those bikes, they usually end up back at the shop.
Right.
Most of the time, we can't help them.
Right.
We can't get a warranty pushed through.
Because you don't have the same access as you do to a brand like Cervelo or whatever.
And they're not going to pay us to call someone and sit on the line and set up their warranty for us. You know, where we eat that stuff if we sell that product. Right. So I'd say if you're a real cyclist, you don't want to work on your own stuff, you're putting some serious wear and tear on your items. It's not just all savings with these consumer direct brands. There's some major downsides. There are some good ones, but there are some bad ones. You know? And,
it's not just that the fact that the bike is 20% less than every other bike.
There's no just
it's not magic.
Free discount. Yeah, exactly. There's a large support network behind the big two U.S. brands. And there's a great dealer network behind them too. Right. It's hard to be one of their retailers. Yeah. It's just hard to qualify. Yeah. So most of the time, if you're buying a bike from a bike shop and they have some big brands, they got their crap together. You know what I mean? So but that's all I'm asking is like people say that all the time. You're a great mechanic. I've been lucky because I've been in the industry for so long. Yeah. It's the only reason why I have so much knowledge. I'm not a magician. I learn the same way everybody else does. But it's because I've worked for some stable shops that I've learned a lot from. Right. And then I work in Narragansett right now. It's a very busy area, especially with the boom after COVID. So we can sustain more employees than most shops can. Yeah. We can train those employees and we can stock a lot of product. Right. So it's not always the case with your small town bike shops, but you spending money there is really important for their survival. You know, like we have this rolling tourist base here, plus a pretty large established cycling community around us. But so I'm lucky more than I'm special.
No, right. But being able to come here is what makes the shop special, right? Like I think so, or what makes any shop with a
And I don't have anything against consumer direct brands. Like if you look at the automotive industry versus the bike industry, the automotive industry is always kind of. They had a big plan 50 years ago where the manufacturers decided we're not going to sell product through mom and pop sales shops. We're going to have dealerships. Then we can control everything. Right. So the bike industry is starting to move to that model now with the Trek retail stores. Yep. Specialized has dabbled in both consumer direct sales and concept store sales. Right. I don't know what's the best model, but I do know everyone needs good support for their product. And right now, the best support is at the independent bike shops. Yeah. So no one brand can let go of that channel without putting serious distress on their sales for the year. So I think that eventually we'll move to really large shops will kind of dominate, and then there'll be some dealer-specific shops like Trek dealers and specialized dealers that will, be a little bit more thorough in who they're hiring and who they're training, and more importantly, maintaining staff, not just keeping them on like a conveyor belt every year. Right. But until then, right now, it's independent bike shops are the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. What's your riding like these days? You have a baby at home.
I got a baby at home. Yep. Yeah. I got a baby, and I work quite a bit, and I drive another 12 hours on top of that. So not much riding. No. So I had a pretty good run for a while when she was like in the 2 to 5 month range. Yep. Man, she's moving now. So yeah. She's crawling all over the place. You got to have eyes on her all the time. So my wife works full time from home. Yeah. So she's just constantly kind of around it. So I try to help her out as much.
That when you're home, that you can.
Yeah. She doesn't ask for it, but she needs it. It's just exhausting. Yeah. I try to help her out as much as I can, and that's kind of put a damper on both the fishing and the riding. Which is okay.
Yeah, right. It's part of life.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Eventually, I think try to get her either on a bike or with a fishing rod in her hand, and then consolidate.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's gonna work out.
What type of riding motivates you the most to get on the bike these days? Is it mountain bike? Is it road bike? Is it?
It's
you don't really dabble in gravel. Do you have a gravel bike at home?
No. I don't even understand it. So, yeah, I get it. If I lived in a place like Vermont and that was the surface to ride on, the dominant surface is dirt, then yeah, I'd have a gravel bike. But right now, that's blending like a bunch of things that I hate about mountain biking and a bunch of things I hate about road riding into one sport that I would probably hate. So
yeah,
I'm happy for you guys. You want to get off the road?
I'm not even happy with it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah,
it is frustrating at times.
It's a great sport. I'd say if you're not a mountain biker and you're a road rider that wants to maybe ride in either a cooler region, do some epic rides,
get off the beaten path, whatever.
Maybe ride something slightly terrifying and scare yourself a little bit. But I'm a mountain biker. Anytime I want to do that, I can do that in my town on my mountain bike.
You want to do it on a mountain bike.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, it's a great sport if you're a road rider and you're just trying to kind of get out and do some other things.
Yeah.
If I'm going to ride something right now, it's going to have to be my road bike just because I am crippled by my own OCD. So if I don't have time to maintain my mountain bike and
the way that you want it,
clean it and stuff like that, it's always been a struggle for me. If I don't have time for a hobby, I don't want to do the hobby. I'm not one of those people that can like enjoy short rides and neglect my stuff. So I'd rather focus on family time than make myself unhappy doing something that I used to like.
So, something that you put so much thought into before,
So with my road bikes, I take a incredible amount of time selecting what parts my bike, the build process, making sure it's literally as solid as I can make it, because I put because of my size and I'd say my riding style, I put a large amount of stress on road bikes.
The bikes,
and they're not intended for people my size to be on them in the first place, and also people riding them hard at my size. So I have to build them appropriately to make sure that they're as close to zero maintenance. Like all I do on my road bike is pump the tires up, wipe it down, and wax my chain. I don't have to do anything other than that. So that's the most convenient for me, where even high-end mountain bikes need almost constant maintenance. If you're riding them hard, accidents happen pretty much every time you ride. So dealing with crash damage and impact damage and the type of riding that I do.
It's just generally a dirtier environment too.
Wear and tear. And that's what gravel is like.
It's very similar.
It's very similar, as far as like the bike is just getting tortured the entire time you're on it. And then again, I'm big. Those bikes aren't designed for me. So now I'm overbuilding a gravel bike. You know, I caught myself this year thinking about putting a suspension fork on a gravel bike and a dropper post. And I'm just like, I have a mountain bike at home. Why am I doing this? So I backed out of it like last minute. But right now, I would say if I moved up north, that's the bike I'd have, you know. But right now, it's oddly enough, I'd be spending my time on my road bike just because of time constraints. I do like road riding too, which a lot of people don't understand because they've always ever seen me riding on my mountain bike. But I enjoy road riding as long as it's good roads and sometimes good people. Like if I'm going to be social, it's easier to be social on a road bike than on a mountain bike. You're not really able to talk, at least at the pace that I want to ride. And then, so it's nice. Every once in a while I can join a group ride and ride with John every once in a while on the road when he's riding slow enough to do it.
I don't know about
and then,
last time you really clowned me really good on I was trying to pull back to the shop. And
my 10-second sprint power is still top notch.
It's really good.
Not my 20-second sprint power.
I will never forget me pulling on the front at a pretty hard pace, me, you, and Matt.
Hey, we're almost 35.
I flicked the elbow, and you didn't pull through.
No.
I went off to the side, and I was like, okay, he'll be here any second.
I was adjacent.
Yes, you were. You were adjacent the whole time, and it was very funny to be like, I was gassed, and I was ready to get on the back of you too.
See, I wasn't sprinting at all. That's just the superiority of speed play pedals. Like,
is it?
We were at a stop sign, so I got in a lot quicker than you guys.
Yep.
Thought I was sprinting, but I was just clipped in before you.
Have you always been a speed play person?
No.
Like for a while, or?
No, like I like speed play from the get-go, but like they were a pain to deal with. I mean, it was like...
I've never run them. I've run Look and Shimano on the road. I've never run speed play.
So it was tough when I started working in a bike shop. They had distributors. You could get product for them.
Yeah.
And they lost their distributors. You had to go direct. And they were like constantly adding pedals to their product line.
What, like different, like the Aero version or a lighter version?
It was before that. It was something they were a pro pedal. They offer pro benefits, stack height, spring retention.
Right.
The type of float that they are superior in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But one big issue with them is if you're a light rider, you can't get into them.
Oh, really? Because they're like that hard to get into.
Yeah, especially zeros. So then they made like light action pedals, walkable pedals. It was mainly trying to make their pedal more marketable for different places, but they like blew up their portfolio. They had way too many things in their catalog. They never had stuff in stock. So yeah, I moved to Shimano pedals for a long time, but my knees are trash.
Yeah.
So now they are the only option, and thankfully they're now run by Wahoo, owned by Wahoo exclusively. So no issues as far as like getting pedals, getting service kits, getting cleats. We sell Wahoo trainers, so we can always do product orders with them. They are still annoyingly only direct. They have no distributors, but at least they always have everything. And in my opinion, if you're riding in a clean environment and you have any kind of foot or knee issues, they are a big piece of the puzzle.
Why is that? So that's not just a personal thing. You think this is across the board for like other types of riders? It's not just because of like your knees and your history.
No.
Speed play is better on the knees and on the joints in general?
Well, it's just more adjustable. It's a little easier to get to a usable setting.
Gotcha.
You can still obtain those settings with Look pedals and Shimano pedals. It just takes more time.
Yeah.
Where all I have to focus on is my fore and aft adjustment on my cleat when I put them on my shoe.
Yep.
And then with zeros, I can adjust my float stops. Like it is not spring-loaded float. Like
so it's not just a certain degree.
Completely free float.
Okay.
And it's centralized. It's obviously a round pedal, so the float is perfectly centralized. It's not pivoting off the front a Look or a Shimano. So you have a better quality float, and it's not self-centering like a Shimano pedal. So if you're a little off on your cleat rotational adjustment, it's not going to affect you at all. Your foot will self-center.
Right.
And more importantly, the first thing most riders notice, that especially if they ride high-end pedals like Dura-Ace or Kios, that when they're climbing and they're out of the saddle and they're swinging their hips a little bit, if they're more dynamic riders, they don't feel any tension in their legs.
Yeah.
Because their foot is literally moving freely from side to side. It's not being held centered by a spring.
Right.
Even though you have, a little bit of float, 2.5 degrees of float or something.
Sure.
With a Dura-Ace pedal, your foot probably is moving a little bit more than that if you're a dynamic rider.
Right.
So I am very dynamic when I'm standing because I am dying. If
you don't like to
stand on a bike, there's something wrong. Yeah. So if I'm standing, I want to have that feeling because I have really bad feet and really bad knees.
Yeah.
So they do a lot for me, but I think they're underutilized by most bike shops because they don't want to deal with the brand, or they're confused by the 4 screws on the cleat instead of the 3. But I think they're a big benefit. I just wish they had a freaking distributor. Shimano's backed out all their distributors for pedals too, which is as annoying too, but at least people just buy a lot more of them at times, so most shops have them in stock.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know how we got talking about speed play pedals.
No, I think I don't know. I guess I'm just interested in, there's so many different things when it comes to like cycling tech. Yeah. And you mentioned about how it, like in mountain biking, they've been pushing the barriers for, close to all the time.
They never stop.
It never stops.
Yeah, every year. Yeah.
But even with I feel bombarded by road cycling sometimes. Like every sea otter or whatever it is that comes around, and I'm like, oh, they've got.
It makes you feel like shit too.
Yeah,
especially if you like new stuff. You're like, ah.
Right. I just got this new thing where I just wrapped my head around this technology. So I think this is a pretty good transition. The classified hub is something that I feel like I've been hearing about for 2 years.
Yep.
When I first heard about it, it sounded really promising, but it is very much not like a mainstream item, right? So for people that don't know, a classified hub is a rear hub. It's a $3,000 hub that goes on your rear wheel, right? And according to Classified, it's a wireless 2-speed shifting system to replace the functionality of a front derailleur. Classified also adds that it allows you to change gears instantaneously under full load in an uncompromised ratio coverage and gear steps. Basically, you can run one by, but you're not just limited to however many cogs are on your rear cassette. You get twice as many with the Classified hub. Is that an accurate way of describing it?
Yeah, I haven't seen one personally either because there's some major drawbacks to the brand itself, I think, is the reason why they're not saturating the market right now. But from what I know is it's a proprietary rear hub. The biggest problem with it is it uses a proprietary shifter and a proprietary cassette.
Yeah.
Two huge problems in our industry is I don't care how they make that cassette, it's not going to shift on par with a Dura-Ace cassette. I did not know it was
a proprietary cassette.
Or a SRAM Red cassette. Right. So automatically you're going to lose a huge chunk of clientele right there because you're using a custom cassette that's not using any of those companies' patents on tooth design. Right. So your shifting performance is going to be obviously not great. Right. Or it may still be functional. But
but it's not going to be the same as it was with a Shimano rear derailleur and a Shimano cassette.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have no experience with their cassette, so I can't say that for certain, but I've used plenty of other cassettes from other companies that were, lightweight Power Dome style cassettes.
Yes.
Most of them make noise. Right. They don't really shift. So I can't imagine that it's going to be fantastic. It may be usable, but that automatically takes it out of the options for me. So they would more than likely be using a planetary gear set of some kind inside that hub. Right. Their white paper, from what I saw briefly, is saying something about a 1% reduction in efficiency when in the climbing gear. Right. Which 1% is remarkable for a planetary gear set. So now gear technology has come a long way. Root dimension, hardness, the bevel pattern. So I know they can make some gains in efficiency. Whether those gains last after those coatings wear off. I don't know how to maintain the inside of that hub, but I'm guessing since it's a bike part, it's probably not maintainable.
Yeah, right.
It's something you're going to ride and then throw away, which is who knows. I don't know whether they have a maintenance package, a seal kit for it, and if they have new gears available. Gears all wear together, so they usually have to be changed out in the set of 3 for a planetary gear set. So there's a lot of unknowns. I'm actually surprised that they haven't been picked up by a company like SRAM. SRAM likes to pick up outside brands like this. That's how Cork was kind of purchased. And obviously in the mountain bike world, the Rock Shop and Avid have been purchased for the same reasons. It'd make a lot of sense if it was coming from a drivetrain manufacturer. And I think SRAM was the first mainstream component company to use a planetary gear set in an odd spot, which was the Hammerschmidt cranks. Okay. Before your time, but
I've never heard of it.
It was a planetary gear set built into a Spider on a mountain bike crank.
Okay.
And it was the same thing. It effectively removed front shifting.
Gotcha.
But it was nowhere near 1% loss. It was staggeringly slow. When you were in that underdrive ratio, it felt like your brakes went on. Like it was that inefficient.
Drag.
Drag. Which is very similar to most planetary hubs as well. So Shimano knows how to make gears. You know, like they specialize in the best gears in the world in the fishing industry. So when they make planetary gear set hubs, they're utilizing that technology. They're still very draggy. Yeah. So 1% is amazing. So a small company, I know they're an automotive company, so there's obviously some stolen technology from probably what they were doing previously that was moved over to the gear design on these. But that would be amazing if 1% is a static loss number across years of use with no maintenance. Right. And that's maintained through the whole thing.
Right. Not
that
just
would be
the
amazing.
First 10 hours, 100 hours or something.
But I would feel a lot better if they had access protocol for their shifter and they also had a drivetrain company making a cassette for them. So if there was a modified SRAM or Shimano cassette that went on to their product, I would feel more comfortable about it. But right now, I personally wouldn't dabble in it because it has some benefits if it does what it's supposed to do. Yeah. Its drawbacks, I think, for me, would cancel that out. I don't shift my front derailleur very often. Yeah. I am not super pleased with my current chain rings, but they still function. Yeah. Shift them.
What are your thoughts on one by on the road?
I couldn't handle it. Yeah. The type of rider I am, it just wouldn't work out for me. There's plenty of riders, if you're one of those guys that every time you feel a change in tempo that you just stand up and accelerate. Sure. One by, you're not even going to notice it. Right. So if you never want to kind of, shift down your front chain ring, you just always want to maintain that large ring, you're the rider they're talking about, And SRAM has gotten close enough with the Explorer Red. It's an amazing shifting T-type road group set. Matt has it on his bike. We have another close friend, Seth from Rotation Engineering, that has it on his bike.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. So it's very close to enough for me. It's like it's just a couple of local roads that I like to.
Yeah, it depends on the roads too. It depends on the riding that you're doing.
It'd be a real struggle for me from an efficiency standpoint because I'm not going to get to an appropriate weight for a long time given work-life stress. So being able to shift to my small ring and maintain a very, very accurate power number that I can manage right now is important. Right. If I'm 20 or 30 watts over what I can maintain at my threshold right now, I'm going to be pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's not going
to be fun. So one by is not for me right now, but I see its merits, especially if you're a pro, more chain security, if it's by a reputable brand anyway. Right. The wide range cassettes work fine for them because they don't shift a lot. Right. You know what I mean? It's just a simpler setup, It's definitely more aero. So, I think classifieds, it's, technology is always driven by small companies like them.
Yeah.
So it's good to see something that interesting.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if it maintained that 1% thing across the board. Yeah. It'd be a lot cooler if it had access protocol. I think it does actually work with some DI2 combinations.
I think it does too, yeah.
I don't know how, but...
I've also heard rumors that like a company like Magine or like L2 might want to gobble something like the classified hub up.
Yeah, that's what I think it will be purchased by, a large scale component company, but it has to be worked into a complete group set. Like, Rotor is dabbled in group sets. Yep. FSA is dabbled in group sets. There's some smaller ones. I don't know if either one of those brands has any OEM saturation. That's the issue is like if you're not selling product to OEMs, it's tough to hack it in the bike industry.
Right. I mean, that FSA group set was in the tour a couple years ago. I don't think it is anymore.
Yeah, the Wii group set.
Yeah.
So
I don't even know if Campy's in the World Tour anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
no more Bianchis.
Yeah.
No, there is. There is a Bianchi, but I don't know if they're on
Shimano, I think. But,
yeah.
I mean, Campy's another one. They make a fantastic product.
Absolutely.
I've ridden a lot of super record bikes over the years, but at this point, it's they lost their local tech rep, who was Buddy, who was a great guy, So anytime we had a cumbersome question, I could get him on the phone within 30 seconds. And if he couldn't help me out over the phone, he was driving here. Yeah. But they lost their local tech rep effectively, which really takes them out of the equation for me pretty much. Yeah. So we probably won't support the new stuff going forward with them, but Shimano has done a great job locally. Jim Grimley, famous local rep. Chris is their tech rep. Always present. George up north. SRAM's doing a better job at it now. So we stick with those brands because not only the product's good, but the support is top notch, So we have a warranty question. You can get a human being on the phone. Right. They help in situations where they don't need to, which was never the case with Campagnolo. Yeah. Like if you had a warranty issue, you were sending it in. If it wasn't by the book, it wasn't getting covered.
Just getting it sent back or
Shimano is very flexible. SRAM is very flexible, always has been. So they understand that stuff goes wrong sometimes and, they need to help a local rider out. So we back those brands because of that. I'd like to see something like that work because that classified rear hub work, I'm not going to buy it from a brand that has too many kind of strange components tied to the design. So
now you sort of spoke to like reputable brands, right? Like trusting people like Shimano and SRAM. Let's talk the opposite end of the spectrum real quick. Like people are wrenching on their bikes at home a little bit, right? Yep. And I think we could all agree that like that's a good thing to understand how your bike works. But like I see so many ads on social media for like X bits or torque wrenches from like AliExpress or Temu or is that something that like you think at home mechanics should stay away from? Like what are your thoughts on anything like that?
I mean, there's an argument for it. Stuff coming out of China can make some amazing products.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if it's a high-end factory. So most of the stuff you're buying online is not that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's pretty crap materials, know?
Right.
And it's interesting. We know Seth really well. He's tested exact alloys from China versus exact alloys from Japan. Yeah. And they've been vastly different as far as hardness and quality goes. So it's not that they are building bad stuff. It's usually that the materials that they're using are subpar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there are some that make really good stuff.
Yeah.
But guess what? The bike tools that you're buying that are high-end bike tools are probably made by those factories that are making good stuff with materials sourced from different companies, whether it be the EU or from Japan. Yeah. But their tooling, their software is superior to pretty much anything else out there. Yeah. Taiwan and Japan can, I'd say, match them as far as manufacturing goes, but their materials are much better. Yeah. China can build it quicker, faster, and they make such a large profit that they can afford better software, better CNC machines, better forging equipment, and maintain it or replace it on a more regular basis. So there's some really good stuff coming out of China, but you have no way of knowing. That's the problem. Right. So I'd say if you're a home mechanic and you're not putting some serious wear and tear on tools, maybe do what you should do is either buy good quality used tools or buy tools piecemeal as you need them. You know, I would rather do that than buy a bunch of bullshit that I'm going to have in a set. That I'm going to have in a bucket for the next couple of years because I used it once and it broke, but the other 6 Allen keys are good. You know? Yeah, right. I'm not that kind of person that just likes piles of shit that I don't use around. So I hand select my tools. I'm not afraid to spend money on tools, even at my home bench that sees nowhere near the amount of wear and tear that a production bench downstairs does. Right. So my advice to you would be good quality used, or spend your money over your cycling career. And, buy the stuff that you need. Don't buy a bunch of dumb stuff that you don't. I guess the stuff that I could justify buying from China would be bearing tools. If you really want to get into bearing removal and sleeves and dies like that, they're really not complex tools. They're individually sized dies that snap into bearings and stuff. You can save a lot of money buying a good press and then buying dies from China, something like that. But complicated tools or tools that rely on really good materials, like Allen key is a really simple tool. Yeah. But the base material is really important. Yeah. The base material is not cheap. Right. All right. So expect to spend $100 on a good set of Allen keys from PB Swiss, or Wera, but I'm not going to buy a $20 set of wrenches from Temu,
Yeah, they're just going to round out, or they're going to round out your...
Yeah, they're going to strip out a $40 titanium bolt or something like that, and I'm going to be like, So I replace my Allen keys about every 3 months on my bench. Yeah. Weras and Bondus are my favorite production tools. They're not overly expensive. Bondus is really affordable for its quality. Yeah. And then bearing tools, I can get a little snobby about because I do a shitload of bearing work. So, and more importantly, I'm trying to maintain finishes on customers' bikes, not ship their swing arms and their rocker links and stuff. So there's no perfect tool for all those scenarios, especially when you're like a blanket repair shop like us, where we're just like, we'll do linkages on everything. We're not just working on Treks. Right. So I'll spend some money on bearing tools where I have thousands of dollars in extraction and press tools at home for that exact reason. But there's a lot of stuff you could buy that's pretty affordable from a reputable tool brand, Right.
And that makes you feel confident when you're doing it.
Yeah, more importantly, it's nice to have a pride of ownership, Right. Like it may have taken you, 10 years to get your tool bench the way you want. Right. But that's a lot better than a bucket of broken shit that you used once. Right. You know what I mean? So if you're that type of person that says, I can buy 3 of these for one of those and I'll just do that, great. I'm just not that person. Like I don't want to back a company that's making wasteful stuff like that, and I don't need the clutter at my house. Yep. I'd rather just buy the good product from the brand that's going to cover it under warranty if something happens and just buy it once. Right. I don't even like buying mid-price tools because of that. Like you kind of get a compromise then. You might get a company that'll back the warranty but is using subpar materials. Right,
so things are breaking more often.
They're breaking more often, but you get new ones. That's the same thing. Like we're just encouraging waste. Right. And, getting cheap tools plated and made in India and in China, the reason they're cheap is probably because the chemicals that are being used to make them, plate them, harden them are not being disposed of correctly. Yeah. So it's not sustainable. So buy good stuff if you can afford it, patch together whatever you have to get your job done. But if you got $1,000 to spend on tools, spend it wisely, I guess. Right. You could call a mechanic if you have questions about the tools. most of the time we'd be willing to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Because I think that's like very valuable, because you might think like, oh, hey, I'm saving 60% on an item.
Yeah.
But like it's going to
more than that. Yeah.
it's gonna cause you so much strife down the line.
There's also a point where there's not a lot of benefits to really bougie tools. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk to somebody about that, talk to someone in the automotive industry. You can buy a set of Snap-on ratchets and Matco ratchets. They're expensive, but they're quality stuff.
Right.
You could also buy some stuff that's 6 or 7 times more expensive than that. There's not a lot of benefits to that.
Doesn't work
stuff,
6 or 7 times better.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
so
right.
You don't have to buy these like ultra bougie tools. Like when you see a race mechanics tool chest and it's filled with Abbey stuff, PB Swiss, really high-end tools, it's a pride of ownership thing for them.
Right.
They're going to buy it. They want to be proud of their tool case.
Yeah.
It's the best tool that they can get. It's got the best coatings. It looks the best. It might be the lightest. That's really important to race mechanics, is they got to fly with a case that needs to hit some strict weights. It's not applicable for somebody who's going to have it hanging on a pegboard in their basement.
Right.
You don't need to spend the money on it.
Right.
We don't have that stuff in the shop downstairs because it wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
you'd be using it too much. But
I have a lot of Abbey tools at home.
Yeah.
I have a lot of PB Swiss stuff. I have a lot of Wera stuff. I have a lot of Snap-on stuff. So it's stuff that I've collected over the years. I didn't buy it all at once. If you bought my tool bench at home for fishing reels and bike stuff and car stuff, it would be $30,000, maybe more than that.
Right. But that's a collection over years, right?
Yeah, and most of it is not well spent. Like some of those tools have been used 6 times, if I'm honest, maybe less than that.
Right.
But it's a pride of ownership thing.
Yeah.
So pride costs money.
Yeah.
In anything.
Yeah.
Sports, tools.
Yeah.
Fishing. Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you got to get back to work, but I just want to one more thing before we get out of here.
Yep.
I pulled this from the internet. I like to spend my time like looking at forums on one of the worst places on the internet, Reddit. But I do think it's like a good spot for like people to be sounding off on things.
Well, it's real.
It's real. Right. And so I spent a lot of time on like the cycling subreddit, and I came across this post yesterday. I'm curious what you think about it, because I personally thought it was wild. So this person goes, advice for riding 100 miles with no training. Either tomorrow or Tuesday, I'll be riding 100 miles with very little training. I'm a solid runner, so my endurance is good, but I haven't ridden a bike in about a year. Before that, I rode it pretty regularly, about 2 miles a day. The bike is pretty old, but it's in good condition. Do you guys have any advice for making the trip easier on me? I will be going early morning to avoid heat, packing tons of water, bananas, energy bars. What kind of negative effects could this have on my body? Also, they add, I'm aware of the seat issue, probably my biggest concern right now.
Yeah.
Would you recommend this to anyone?
No, but it sounds like me. Because I remember when I did my first century.
Yeah.
It was probably maybe 2005.
Yeah.
I got my first like bike shop bike. I was working at Silver Bike Shop. I got my first like shop funded bike.
Yeah.
Like they were like, hey, we want you riding on the road rides. Because I was a pretty fit mountain biker at the point. And they're like, we just need you to be present on the road rides for like, shop saturation type.
Sure.
So I got a road bike. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to ride it. And I think I went out that weekend and did 100 miles. But I had a lot of base fitness.
Yeah.
And it's still, man, I was at I detonated at 60 miles.
Dang.
Like, couldn't hold my head up.
Yeah.
Full turtle shoulders. My hands were numb.
Yeah.
Stuff down here wasn't working right.
Yeah.
It hurt to pee for like 3 weeks.
So it was a full combination of fit and fueling.
And that was with, 10 years of mountain biking ahead of that.
Right.
5 years was hard mountain biking, and it was a tough day.
Yeah.
It was mainly my posture on the bike wasn't right. My fit on the bike wasn't right. I had no idea what I was doing, so I was riding it like a mountain bike, accelerating for no reason, just doing a bunch of stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was still a lot of fun.
It was.
Yeah, and I kept, after that, I kept road riding.
Yeah, it didn't stop you.
No, that one experience was like, man, I was horrendous at that. I thought I was going to be like the next big thing when I got on a road bike. I'm like, all you guys got to do is pedal this thing. So I rode like a knucklehead off the front the whole time. Yeah. Everyone in the local club, which is still around QV Vela, was very nice to me as a kid because I was a real pain in the ass. But that was a struggle, man.
Yeah.
I barely made it back on that ride. That was, I think, the Mystic Century. They still do it today.
Oh, okay.
They like ride down to Mystic. And the Westerly.
That's like Quinnebog Valley. Is that what you're
saying?
saying?
Yeah, Quinnebog Valley.
Yeah.
But I know most of those people still, a lot of them are still customers who drive all the way down here in Narragansett.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds a lot like me. So yeah, I would never recommend it, but some people, that's how you learn.
True.
I'm one of them.
True.
I am a run before you walk type personality.
Yep.
I also don't like, this may come as a surprise to most people, but I don't like researching a lot of stuff first. I like doing some piss poor version of it myself.
Yeah.
And then I feel like I can absorb and understand the intricate directions after that.
Sure.
Because
you've experienced it.
I've experienced it. It makes a lot more sense to me why things are being done the way they are.
Yes.
So I work on a lot of complex stuff, but I like to buy it before it's in production if I can.
Yeah.
Use it for a period of time, and then make my own assumptions on how it needs to be adjusted. Then when the factory back stuff comes out, I kind of merge the two together to kind of make my processes.
What do you mean before things are released? Is that just because your involvement in the industry?
Well, I don't have a ton of involvement in the industry, like from brand specifically, but there's a lot of stuff that's released through ambassador programs or through pre-sales programs.
Beta testing, if you will, something like
exactly.
that. Right?
Like I did a lot of wheel testing with Bontrager when I started at NBX, just because I had a knack for detonating free-up bodies and still do, where they effectively just sent me stuff for years. Right. And we're just like, try to break this. We just need to get to a level where if you can ride it for a year, we're pretty sure that no one else will mess it up.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. So if I can get, SRAM's really good at it. They always get employees at the bike shops on the product before it's available. Yeah. Gets you accustomed to working on it. Gets you accustomed to, selling it if you're a salesperson.
Right. It sort of benefits everyone.
It does. And it makes employees feel special. I pretty much had all the passion burned out of me over the years. But if you're a new employee here and a SRAM rep walks up to you and is like, hey, we got this new group set. Here's a pro form. You can fill it out. It makes you feel cool. You feel like a pro. Yeah. I just don't have a soul anymore, so it's not effective on me.
Yeah.
But I do like doing that. So I understand this person. Hopefully they are a good runner.
Yeah. Hopefully they're a good runner and they have a good endurance engine.
Because they're probably just going to wreck their neck and their butt, and then they'll be probably fine. Other than that, I used to volunteer at the Pan Mass every year. Yeah. That's the regular person. Right. You ride in that ride for other reasons. Right. Training and cycling is not, part of it. Yep. So, man,
it's a big event for people, but, whatever, training might not happen. They have other things in life.
They don't take it seriously. They take their time. They think they can survive 2 days of, whatever it is, 80 miles a day or whatever. Right. But I used to work the Franklin stop, which is like 60 miles in, I think. Yeah. Right. You see some people in a lot of pain at that point. And I'm like, you got the next day after. Right. But I understand it. Right. I did the same thing.
I wonder how long it took this person.
Like 10 hours or something.
You could reply.
I should follow up.
Get a progress report.
Yeah, we should follow up.
See if they're still around.
Yeah. But. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on before we get out of here? Thank you once again for your time. You got any builds this week that you're looking forward to?
Looking forward to.
That's a strong question.
Yeah, that's a strong
question. This is work.
Yeah,
after all.
It is work. Yeah, it's a solid job. You know what I mean? I like working on fancy stuff. So this week, I think Seth has purchased yet another bike.
Oh,
nice. So I'm going to be working on his bike, and we have a couple.
The last guest of the podcast, Seth. We've talked about him a couple times. So the guest
now is, what bike did Seth get?
Yeah. Leave that in the comments below.
Yeah. But I'll be building his bike. He'll be pestering me about that momentarily, I'm sure, asking for tracking and stuff. But he's very excited. Nice. So I'll be building his bike, and then it's mountain bike season right now. So people are they dig out their old mountain bike. Their best friend got a new mountain bike, and so we're always building mountain bikes this time of the year. So.
If this is mountain bike season, one last question. This is mountain bike season, or let's say road bike season here in Southern New England starts in May, right? Yeah. When should people be servicing those bikes? Should they be waiting until November to service their mountain bike, or should they be doing it?
They shouldn't be. Right. But yeah, I would service my mountain bike if I was riding seasonally, which I'm not. But if you're typical joint cyclist, I would say, that's riding road in the summer, mountain in the fall and the winter. Yeah. You should be servicing your mountain bike around June or July. Yeah. That way, if there's anything big on it that either needs to be sent out for factory support because it can't be serviced inside, or the bike shop that's around you can't do the suspension service on it, at least you can get that stuff dialed in before there's a 4-week wait associated with it, you know? Somewhat bad timing right now for the mountain bike stuff too, because Fox's service center is in North Carolina.
Oh boy.
And you know, some of that stuff got slowed down a little bit. They got their stuff together really quick, but yeah, that's what you try to avoid, is like 2-week turnaround time at a factory for a service plus a week of, you know, transit time, and then the bike shop putting it on and off. So yeah, try to get ahead of that stuff if you're going to use your bike seasonally like that. If you're like me and you have both bikes in your garage and you have a trainer bike, it's not like a big concern of mine, because I'm not a real.
You can ride something else.
I'm not a social rider, so if I miss out on the Thursday group ride, I'm not going to like lose my crap about it. I'm just going to go ride my trainer in my basement. So I'd say it's all about expectations. If you're one of those people that has to have your bike for a season, then get your bike
ahead of
fixed before. Exactly. If you're more flexible like me, then do whatever the hell you want.
I know a lot of people that ride the road will like almost going into winter, not winterize their bike, but like, okay, now's a good time to check all the bearings, go through it all, gut it. Yeah,
the best part about bicycles is that you can usually afford to rip the entire thing down to the frame. You know? So, and that is appropriate if you're riding bikes as much as you do, not only for safety concerns, but you start to assess yearly, if you're riding the same bikes year after year, what you're going through, the areas that you need to focus more on with your maintenance. You start to develop maintenance patterns. That's really important. That's, like I said, what I enjoy about a bike is that most enthusiasts can afford to have their bike completely stripped and put back together. That's what I like to do. You know, I don't want to do tune-ups on salted up beach cruisers down here. You know what I mean? I want to work on bikes for people who expect a lot from them. Now, I wouldn't say we're the cheapest shop in the world, but we're by no means gouging people labor-wise. But it is important to pull your bike apart, whether you do it yourself, assess everything for safety, and then put it back together correctly and safely. If you're not comfortable with doing that yourself, then you got to pay for it. You know what I mean? Don't skip it, because then you put yourself at risk, as well as, this is really important, others around you. All right? If you're on a group ride and your wheel falls off because you put your quick release on, and you take out the field, you're responsible for that. You know what I mean? So, take care of your stuff. Riding bikes is dangerous, especially on the road. You know?
It is. It's a calculated risk every time we get on our bikes. And so, how do you mitigate that risk? Taking care of your stuff.
Take care of it yourself. I'm completely fine with that. That's literally the roots I came from. I'm going to, if you have a question about it, call the store. If I don't have time, I'll call you back. You can always ask for me on the phone. I almost never can pick up the phone when you call me. But I promise I will call you back. And I can, answer some questions about that. But we're not in the business of teaching everyone how to do everything.
No,
It's
well, that's not what this is.
It's not. We're not a charity.
It's not a charity.
We'll help you out where we can. But we're here to work on bikes and to get paid to do it. So, we'll help you out with that stuff too. If you need to make an appointment, you don't want any downtime, I'll tell you the best ways to go about it. We are a general repair shop, so my whole ethos is I want to be able to do everything for the bikes that I sell. So I try to maintain that. There are some bikes that I refuse to buy tools for because I know that they'll be discontinued in a year. But most of the stuff we can do all in-house. If we have to send anything out for factory service, it's something we don't want to buy tools for, we'll make an appointment for you so you don't have downtime.
Well, cool. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for your time.
Bye, people of the internet.
Goodbye, people of the internet. We are It's Just a Hill, a cycling club that promotes inclusion, judgment-free, with no gatekeepers. Focused on creating content from behind the handlebars to in the studio, It's Just a Hill is producing videos and podcasts to spread the message that cycling is for everyone. We are focused on reminding everyone that riding your bike can help you overcome any obstacle, because after all, it's just a hill.
Decaf left, regular right. Decaf left, regular right. Very challenging work.